Good afternoon, folks. We're back for day 11 of Gas County. Uh, it seems like I was talking about this a little bit the other day that we can go really deep, and then we sort of need to reconstruct the assumptions that we have about making software around the practical tasks that we're doing. One example of that, perhaps, is that last time we made an agent that the mayor might call on if it needs information about how to do something in Gas City. And that agent is supposed to have context in its prompt about the fact that we have a local Gas City installation and that it can go look things up inside of that installation. And then the question becomes like, how do you get the mayor to pay attention to this agent? So we invented a new sort of agent, a concierge, that is used for discoverability of the agents that are available in the city, a sort of directory, if you want. Uh, and then the question, of course, is how do you get the mayor to use the concierge to find the Gas City agent, to learn the secret that it wants to learn about Gas City implementation? um, because putting it in the mayor's prompt and expecting the mayor to just remember that forever, keep it top of mind, use it flawlessly, um, it's not very reliable, especially as the context window gets degraded. As time goes on, it's less and less likely to remember and keep that top of mind. So I suggested, well, if you had a formula and we named it something, then I could say, hey, use your formula to go and delegate this work. Or when I say the secret word, pineapple or whatever, then the mayor will go and execute that formula and it will do all the things that I expect when it, as an executive, is trying to farm out work to all of the teams and experts and I guess it's hard to describe what we're doing exactly, but we have this mayor. It has a certain prompt, it has a certain default set of things that it does, but it's not really a middle manager. It's not a TPM who knows everybody. The concierge, I guess, that we're writing is sort of like who knows everybody and who knows how to talk to who to get a big project done. I think that's sort of the vision of this. And so we're trying to recapitulate the history of creating a software firm as fast as possible. And that's weird, right? It's weird that if you want to make software these days, that instead of just, typing in a command that says, make me a piece of software, why are we going all the way up to say, oh, well, actually, you need to create the manager or the executive who knows how to create the startup and who knows how to create all the teams and tools that those teams would need. And the way that this happens normally is that it's a really high cognition thing, right? Um, you start a startup with a few people. Um, Hiring the first few people is very important because they set the tone of the culture. They need to wear lots of different hats. Their jobs are very high cognition, right? And when you don't know anything, obviously that's where you have to start, is exploring an area, being your own researcher, crafting the documentation for future generations, that kind of stuff. And each different firm is going to end up with a sort of different repertoire, a different set of documents. Maybe you hire somebody who's from a certain place in the industry because you want that DNA in your company. And then they start writing the documents that were helpful in their context. And hopefully they apply with equal force to your context. And so we're doing this really meta thing, right? Which is like, can I trust these agents to create new teams on the fly, to then delegate appropriately to those teams? Do we have a triage person for every sort of little subject area who will be able to route things and say, that is for me or that's not for me? Uh, and we find ourselves like, you know, uh, trying to automate these people processes in a sense. And so that's weird for me. I'm not a middle manager. That's not my training or anything like that. I watched people do it. I watched what my managers and supervisors and directors did, and I watched what our TPMs did to a greater or lesser degree. And it turns out that's a job that I want to be done. Um, but I wouldn't expect like the subject matter expert and the triage person to be the same person in this city, in this context. So here's my message to the mayor. And we did have a power outage yesterday. It was like really windy where I was. And so the lights flickered. We lost our context. Um, so this is what I remember we were doing. Running some catalog ingestion on Nikori catalog. I think it's done. The catalog query tool, we were like going, hey, how do I find other games of the type that I'm interested in that share this vocabulary word, so that I can try to sort of zero in on how the antiquarian that is cataloging everything, how it's categorizing these different games based on a certain mechanic. And we were like, if I don't know the definition of that mechanic, if I play through three examples, then I'll, intuit what it's actually talking about. And that, I think that did happen. But like, it wasn't easy for me to go find those examples. Like, basically, like grepping through the files in the catalog was my query tool. And so I figured that we could do slightly better. It also raises the point of should this be more structured data, like a SQLite or something like that? Certainly, like in a production system, we'd be talking about, making a database somewhere and doing backups and all this stuff. Um, but at this point, maybe not necessary. We can reconstruct a lot of what we've done, perhaps, because as long as I don't lose this VM that has all of this data inside of it, um, I'll be able to like run all these processes again. And I would think that the agents, like if I deleted the database and I wanted to get it back, I would just have them run this process again. And I feel like we would get pretty much the same process because all the formulas have already been defined and we've already been sort of editing them with the mayor and stuff like that. So yeah, let's spend a little bit of time getting meta. Um, I titled this one Conway's Law Enforcement because we're going to talk about Conway's Law today. Conway's Law is that when you're creating a piece of software, the structure of the software mirrors the communication structures of the organization that created it, right? And so, for example, if you have a software that's built by two teams, you're likely to have two big modules, and those might communicate with each other, through an API or something like that. Uh, if you have one person building a piece of software, then you're likely to get one big thing. And notice how true that is when you ask Claude or our mayor to do something. It's instinct, right? Because it's simple and does the job. Is it's not communicating with anybody. It doesn't need like well-defined interfaces. It doesn't have to collaborate or agree on how different parts are supposed to work together. So it just makes one gigantic program all in one page, a 5,000 line piece of Python or something like that. And you really have to push it. Hey, this isn't factored well. This isn't the way that we do it. This isn't how we make maintainable software. This isn't how we make changes minimal. Uh, and it's not how we test things either, because when we split things into small modules, they become tractable to understand and to update and to change without breaking other things. And you can waste a lot of time spinning your wheels if you have a really big Python program or whatever, and you change one line and it affects something, 2,000 lines later. And then you're like, okay, my tests aren't passing. You spend a lot of tokens going, how do I get this test to pass again? When you could have had maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 modules. You make a small change in one module, it's contained to that module. If a test breaks, then you fix it in the context of that module, ignoring the context of the rest. So much better way to work. And definitely like the fruit of millions, billions of years of labor in the software industry to get to this point, that have proved this lesson time and time again. That the smaller the module, the better your life is going to be. Um, and so, what does that suggest about Conway's Law? Conway's Law said that the software is going to be like that. There's kind of a corollary, right? Which is that if you want your software to look a certain way, what if you're able to design the organization that the organization looked like you want the final product to look. And in human organizations, that could be very disruptive, right? Like, oh, it turns out we actually need to bubble off a team. This work got really big, or we need to shrink that team, or people need to change teams so that the spirit of this thing looks correct. Or for this one product, the team structure should look like this, and for another product, the team structure should look slightly different. And so, do you have people like running back and forth between those two teams? Sometimes. Do you have substantially different communication structures? Sometimes. Software firms have another sort of related problem, which is if I'm working on two slightly different things, how do I build my expertise and repertoire so that the things that I know about one generalize to related software or a related module in different software? And I'd really like to be able to let my teams run independently through sort of well-defined interfaces. And I would like to allow that team to evolve inside of its niche. And that could be a subject matter niche, that could be a technical niche. It really depends on like what the company is sort of calling for regularly, right? Because if you have a sort of one-off team, this is a kind of team that I've seen in the past, right? A one-off team that comes and does a project, figures out what to do, delivers the code, and then leaves and goes to the next project and does the project. And that is definitely a spirit that is nice to have inside of your organization. A team who's focused on, for instance, metrics, getting something working again, or getting something to become vibrant that was kind of sluggish, getting something to perform that was not doing very well, something like that. Adding a new feature that cross cuts a lot of different teams, doing a lot of weird, dirty work. And so, man, I guess I've been talking a lot. And so their expertise kind of turns into we can come and do anything kind of random. We're great at parachuting in, doing something for a little bit, and then parachuting out. But that's not the typical team at a software firm, I wouldn't say. Much more likely, some team develops a go to expertise in a certain part of the software stack, or a certain feature, or a certain area of data. So, for instance, I've worked on manufacturing at the rocket factory, or I've worked on compliance at the financial tech firm. And there were a lot of teams inside of compliance, but you could imagine that it was an organization that was really geared toward the ins and outs of financial compliance, right? Like making sure that we could investigate or we could monitor activity on the network and report it to the government if necessary. That's sort of like 2 seconds about compliance, right? And that team started to be shaped really differently than a team that was working on, um, selling ads, marketing, uh, running the point of sale for a merchant. You know, each one of these teams has such a different shape by the time they're done. They need, perhaps one team needs to have expertise at the hardware software boundary because it's working with actual point of sale machines. Another team needs to learn about social media and social media marketing or search. And each one of those areas of expertise is itself like its own textbook, its own big thing. And so I think that I'm coming to this gas city with that instinct that by the time we're done, we're going to have a little software firm in miniature. And I've picked the problem inside of this rig, incremental, that it's going to be a little software firm that knows how to make puzzle games. Uh, but that could encompass a lot of different expertises and teams and so on. So uh, I would like for my mayor to understand Conway's law and for my mayor to create the team structure, the different areas of expertise that we want to have uh, to create some kind of communication structures. And we're not trying to assume too much about how those are supposed to look inside of the city in the AI world. We're just trying to sort of control the context. We're trying to lower the amount of noise or extraneous context that each little specialty needs to do its particular job. With the intuition that when we're making things for specialties that have a single responsibility or that do a single thing well, when they build their repertoire, it's going to remain relevant. And they're going to start getting better and better at what they do because they'll have done a lot of works, they'll have internalized a lot of lessons, written some more documentation, added some formulas and workflows, created some procedures, done certain things on the regular, scheduled some work perhaps. And that's going to be better than if we just dropped this work to a sort of vanilla city and said, do your best. So uh, I think the other thing that we're sort of hoping is that if there's a measurable difference between the vanilla city and our little software firm for creating puzzle games, then we've sort of built a design mode around our product, around what we're doing. Anybody that wanted to do what we're doing would have to go replicate all of that work. Um, you know, it's true. You could watch all of my videos, you could type all of the same things. Um, you're sort of missing me, right? You're missing what I notice as we go through this process. And the mayor is a little non-deterministic, right? It's not going to do things exactly the same way for you. And so the way that you steer this whole project as the little CEO of that puzzle firm is going to be different than the way I do it. And that's cool. It's cool for you to do your thing. Um, you'll probably feel better if you're doing your own thing instead of doing my thing. Uh, it's not like I picked the greatest business opportunity in history, right? Making mobile puzzle games is not perhaps the most lucrative or the most socially responsible or, personally remunerative thing that I could have picked. But it is something that is sort of a passion for me. And if it's a passion for you too, there's probably room for more than one mobile puzzle game. I hope so already. There's lots of them already. But... Okay, so let's get back to our mayor. Um, why I think that it can reconstruct things is it could go look at its prior conversations and that kind of thing. Um, and then we can do this. And then I'll try to get it to talk to me about Conway's law and how we're going to start talking to one another, where we're going to put the middle managers, and how they are going to, own their. All right. Yes, see, it already doesn't know. It can't. It doesn't remember talking about the concierge. So yeah, I'm not trying to interrupt it. I'm just sort of it probably would get to all this eventually. Like yeah, I think that this in particular is probably going to cause it to read the conversation. Okay. One thing that we were doing while we were waiting for the mayor, I think this is very silly content, obviously, but we can continue going through different puzzle games. We did do Choco Banana. And here's the list. The next one on our list, we're just going to go through them all, I think. We're going to recognize some of these. We're not going to spend much time on Sudoku, but yeah, all of these we're sort of like building our own repertoire of what's been done in puzzles, and the Nikori ones are a good place to start, I would say. So, draw lines through cell to make a single loop. The loop goes through the center of cells, horizontally or vertically. Never cross itself, branches off, or goes through the same cell twice. So this is very similar to the way that loops work in Slitherlink. Another one that I'll be happy to show you. And the white and black circle thing, there's another puzzle in Simon Tatham's puzzles that's pretty similar. I can show you that real fast, probably. Here, let's return to the portable back to main puzzles page. His name for this is Pearl. Draw a single closed loop, given clues about corner and straight squares. And hopefully, yeah. There we go. Okay. So black is corner, white is straight, and we've got a single closed loop. White is straight, but it also must have like a curve. So this is illegal. There needs to be a curve next to at least one side of this white circle, or white pearl if you want. These black pearls need to bend at the corner. So this is like the only way to do this one in the corner. Here we've hit this white pearl. It needs to go straight through there. Then if you recall, it can't go straight again. It needs to bend. If this one went straight, then we'd have branching in the loop. That's illegal. We have to go straight through this way. This one has nowhere else to go. We're making one big loop. And here, if we did this one, we would close the loop, and we have to go through everything. So this doesn't work. So we know that this one can't go this way. It has to go this way. Black is a corner. So we can continue this one. It had nowhere else to go. We can't close the loop yet. And so there we go. One consequence of this let's see, like so. This is illegal because we can't get the line straight through this end. If we have a white on the edge, then we have to keep it flat on the edge, like so. We have to bend this one in 90 degrees, so we have to pick either left or right. There is no left, so we have to go right. And then we can't draw the line through a black pearl like this. It has to bend at the corner. So instead, we have to go this way on both of these. Whatever we choose for a white pearl, if there's an adjacent white pearl, we have to do the same thing. Sort of implied by these rules. Go. Here we have to turn in the corner to keep our loop going. There's no choice on this next one. Keep the loop going. And then there's no choice on that one. We have to go straight through white pearls. Can't close the loop early. I'm trying to draw that, but yeah, just a little slow. Yeah, I will wait. See how our I hope we're not running into another like storm like we were getting before. Here, let me check the system containing the VM. See if we're once again like running into the big right that we were having trouble with. It does say that it's writing a heck of a lot. So yeah, let's If we can make it force quit, I think we want to. Looks like we have to hard reset the VM again. Let's do it. Yeah. If it's doing a gigabyte of writes per second, then that's a gigabyte of writes too many. And this happened the last couple of sessions. I don't know why. I guess it's got to be something about. We sort of figured out that Dolt was doing it, but that's all we know so far. Hmm. This seems to be frozen. Let's try resetting again. Uh, I guess one nice thing about having a VM where um, we're writing down all of our data, we don't have to do anything else with it. Um, you know, is that I'll just kill it and restart on demand. But I do feel like we need to start figuring out like what's going on with the these performance issues because it is starting to interfere with our ability to do stuff from day to day. I feel like it's freezing on startup. Sort of looked like it was going, but let's do a hard shutdown and restart and see if that helps. I don't think there's anything too surprising on here. But sorry for showing you the window for the VirtualBox Manager. Let me fix that too while I'm thinking about it. Okay, I think that will be a little more strict. This might be a hang too. Uh, yeah, I don't know. The CPU says it's chugging right now, so maybe we'll just give it a little bit more time. Yeah. Sorry, the most boring stuff I can imagine. Waiting for VMs to come back to life, especially reliable ones like this. There we go. That was faster. It's snappy. Let's start our desktop. Do it. All right. What else can we say about Conway's law? It implies that there's a certain amount of information hiding as well, that different teams aren't in each other's business. So they're communicating through well defined APIs. And you could also say that there are business processes that kind of enforce that as well. Like, for instance, the communication structure of how you approach a team, how you put new work on its plate. I do not know why this isn't starting up. And those have something to do with Conway's law as well, right? They say like, Well, my team doesn't just have people that you can go assign work to. Instead, you have to come in through my team, potentially through a sort of human workflow. Um, Write a ticket explaining your problem or requesting our work. Then we evaluate that and take it through our series of steps until we think that it's ready for work. So some steps might be like defining requirements, um, prioritization against other requirements. So like maybe every quarter, for instance, you prioritize what work is going to happen in the next quarter. And some of these things have analogs inside of our machine city, and some of them really don't. I think what I'm going to do, let's quit the power off the machine. Let's restart the VirtualBox manager too. Shut down some other non-essential stuff. And hopefully we'll be able to reclaim some memory on this for a loaded system. I really don't think this is, I'm not asking too much, but all right, let's go. Yeah, I think Conway's law enforcement is kind of cute, right? Um, are we going to have a Conway's law enforcer? That would be pretty sweet, right? What if you could just magically have a guy running up and down your org chart that says, "Hey, this is working" or "This isn't working," and this is what I expected. Just go. All right. I guess from inside baseball point of view, we could like do some homebrew checks to see if there's a new version of the software that seems to be continually shooting us in the foot. uh, Jolt is outdated. Get that going. Out of curiosity, I think I'm just going to look at Jolt, see if it see if there are any recent issues. uh, Certainly, a lot have been filed. Um, Disk. I'm just looking at the like GitHub for Dolt and seeing if there are any open issues about disk usage or maybe I can yeah, I don't feel like I've been using up, 67% of the disk. Hmm. Let's get our mayor going. Maybe he could just clean it up for us. And also get our editor going. I'm trying to remember where the adult stuff is in the city itself. Um, it's been a minute since we looked at all of that. Um, tools, overlays. Yeah, I didn't think so. No. Okay. We've got a dot cloud here. It's got some skills, but that's it. We've got a dot gc. Um, yeah, maybe session hasn't started up yet. Okay. Dot b slash dol. Am I dumb? Emacs might not know where we are. It's right here that there's a .b slash dol directory. I imagine incremental might be the biggest one, but let's start looking through our directory structure here. Doesn't say that it's big. Maybe it's just this is just a configuration file. Let's see if we can find out. This is nice. We had another disk usage storm. Can you tell me good Linux tool to find? So on Mac, there's something called Grand Perspective. On Windows, there's something called Windorstat. But I don't know what it is on Linux. Or what I'm looking for, but for Ubuntu. I think you probably say it Ubuntu. Okay, cool. Uderstat. Let's try and install that. Um, ah! For homebrew, I suppose. Baobab. Right. Baobab of slash. And I don't think we're going to see anything super sensitive here. Hopefully. I don't think I've been messing with this VM for anything that I consider personal. Maybe some stuff in the workspace directory that we're not going to look too fast at, but I really thought that 100 gigabytes would be sufficient for all the projects I wanted to do here, but maybe I just need to sort of, you know, kick out this Windows computer and devote a hard drive to Linux and just roll with that. Scintillating television, I'm sure. We were talking about Conway's law enforcement. If if there was a Conway's law enforcer, what would it do? It would, I guess, look. It'd have to look at two things, right? It'd have to look at the software that was created and the communication structures that created it, and it would be able to take a software architecture smell, and then it would decide. Okay, so we made a swap file the other day. That's fine. I don't know what all this stuff in var is. I mean, I recognize some of these as programs that I have installed. Emacs. I tried this for like reading PDFs. This is the thing that we're drawing on when we can only do drawings of puzzles, Krita. Um, KF5. ADA frameworks, yeah. Don't think we could get rid of it. All right, let's go back up to slash. I do like this. It's cool. I would imagine that, yeah, obviously, we shouldn't have 5 GB in cache. I wouldn't think. It might not be the worst though. Hmm. So 30 GB in home. Let's reason through this a little bit. 13 GB in user. Doesn't look like something that's sort of been growing without bound, you know. It might be that I need to allocate even more disk for the activities I want to do here. Maybe it is just getting full. That seems weird to me, but uh, yeah. I mean, this seems like a lot. Let's see. Okay, we're happy to keep that running. If we close this terminal, that executable is going to close. Let's take a look at this. Okie dokie. Um, let's look for. I'm gonna look for issues related to events data. Can leave behind large files of telemetry data and never clean them up. Yeah, we got lots and lots of these. There is an issue about this. Adult Hub issues. Here it is. And it says that it's leaving behind a lot of events files with telemetry data. It uploads them asynchronously when the process shuts down. If the uploads fail, it doesn't delete the files. It results in the accumulation of useless files. Okay. So I don't totally care about this telemetry data. Um, let's start with I am really okay with this adult config that is in that issue. Let's see. Sorry. I have like 3 ways to copy that I'm trying to work through from this system to that system to that program. All right. And now we're going to RM. Let's see here. Let's go in. I don't really want to look at this data. Yeah, see, that's too much. Okay, we're here already. And then we're going to um, see, I'd expect this like glob. Yeah, it's right. It's too much. Um, okay, this should do it. Now we're piping these files one at a time to xargs. Well, a batch at a time to xargs, I think. You can control the size of the batch in xargs with -n. And now there's nothing in here except for a dolt lock. Okay, great. So hopefully we saved, 3 GB of useless event files that I don't need. All right. That should be a little out of date now, which is fine. Corvus, another gas city I made. A gas town, gas county. I probably don't need all of these. I'm surprised that workspace, this is where the source code goes, is actually smaller. I'm pretty sure that .dolt is not, it's mostly empty now. What's in here? Just browser cache. No, not a big deal. I don't think, 2.5 is this all just for quick suggest. That seems crazy. Yeah. Who knows? All right. We forgot to look at var. Again, stuff that I had installed. We could probably go and uninstall, I would say, some of this. We could even uninstall Emacs because we're obviously running it just fine through Homebrew and our terminal. Well, I don't know. I guess it's installed through Snap. Okay, let's see here. Manage. Let's get rid of some stuff we don't need, probably. I don't think we really need Discord on here, but whatever. Just leave it. Krita, we're still using. Sort by size, large to small. There we go. Don't need this. this. Those they didn't pass. They weren't the PDF editor that we were looking for. It's weird that it's still on the list, but I guess that's it for us. 934. Okay, sure. Fine. Manages firmware updates. Okay. Alrighty. Hopefully that's enough. Okay. How was good. Um, okay. Let's go back and see what else it thinks is going on. It thinks that the Nakodian Jess molecule looks good. Parent molecule never got closed. Yes, sure. Dispatch the other work. Okay, cool. Let's leave that for now. We were talking about Conway's law enforcement. I promise that we will somehow get a Conway's law officer up and running. Okay, great. Okay. Now let's return. While that's working, we're doing some kind of meta work. I suggested we have a concierge so that any agent can look up and decide who to send work to or learn about a question. For instance, in a previous session, you wanted to know how something worked in GC, and we created a GC Oracle agent to manage that, to be an expert on that, build its repertoire over time. Over time, the concierge would know about that expertise, although it would not have that expertise. And when you ask the concierge, it would direct you to GC Oracle. GC Oracle. When you ask the concierge, it would direct you to GC Oracle. we were also working on a formula for you to remember to the formula for you to follow when deciding how to do work. Looking for experts or departments to delegate to instead of doing the work yourself. Um, the reasoning is as follows. We want to create an organization that specializes in its niches and grows its repertoire while hiding details from the context of other agents. We are trying to follow Conway's law and design our gas city and its agents, formulas, and teams around that principle with the goal of creating software products that are well modularized and have appropriate communication structures. Think a little bit about what it means to introduce the concierge teams and middle management to our gas city. Where does the analogy fit and where does it break down? What can we skip from the human software company and what should we add to the agent software company? All right. I don't know what it's going to say. Of course, it will say, "You're absolutely right. What a genius idea." But how do you go about enforcing Conway's law? I think you need to have the software. You need to have the communication structure that produced it, and that's interesting, right? Because it's not necessarily true that the communication structure is just laid out for you. It could potentially be in the beads database, all documented to some degree. We could watch different niches of the Git repository evolve, perhaps, and paint this sort of picture. But then the Conway's law enforcer also needs to define the structure of the software, right? See how it's built by modules, see how those relationships adapt and evolve. Okay. And of course, I'm not in the window again. All right. Let's see what it says. The concierge is service discovery, not management. Yeah, I agree. It's more like there are other people inside of a software engineering who know everybody draw people together and perform this sort of like Rolodex kind of function. So I wouldn't call it management. Most of what middle management does in human orgs is people shaped. I don't think so. Um, Spanning Dunbar limits, I think, is a thing. You're routing requests, not managing humans. That I would agree with. I guess what I believe as well is that middle managers or teams, um, they have spans of control. They run projects. They prioritize requests. Um, and so a lot of it's true. This people stuff is not going to be as relevant. Um, Perhaps the performance feedback might be relevant. Like, hey, you guys did a really bad job with this request. And then the manager figures out, why did we do that? Why did we go wrong? Um, Perhaps runs the correction of errors, the incident after action report, or something like that. It seems like we could still have those, um, but they wouldn't terminate in, oh, well, that's we might actually be able to talk about why did the agent do that, that kind of thing. Hidden specialization. Yes. Loose coupling via directory. Lower end by end agent discovery to end by concierge. Every new specialist is available. Repertoire growth. Yes, that is what I believe. We are accumulating institutional knowledge and it's cheaper. In humans, the org chart is sticky, it's disruptive to change teams, like I was talking about. For agents, the org chart is a prompt. You can reshape it in seconds, so architecture can drive org instead. Is that true? Let's keep reading. The concierge directory effectively is your module map. If you want the software to be modular, design the concierge to route along that boundary, and the agents will produce code that respects it. See, onboarding is free. Is that true? You don't need permanent departments. Spin up an expert per molecule. So there's context, but we were just talking about institutional knowledge, right? Like, it seems like one of the pieces of institutional knowledge is not just a random agent reading a document, but also shaping the prompts of that agent, shaping the tools and the formulas of that agent. And so, if we're talking about like, how do I drive down the costs of agentic engineering? I think a lot of it, from my point of view, has to do with um, finding an agent that can do this job cheaper with less cognition, right? And certainly it's less cognition if you're just like, oh, when I get this situation, I execute this workflow. Very simple decision to make, easy to record that decision, treat it as a rule, and then, use it as dispatching. We can push this down really far toward determinism, right? Toward things that happen automatically when they should. So this is it's a sort of interesting contrast, right, between institutional knowledge that we do need and departments that we don't need. Is that a contradiction? In my mind, it kind of is. Knowledge transfer is CP. It's sort of true, but it's not true in that, say that the department, if you will, has been building a repertoire and has been building a language, right? I often see this when I ask the mayor to talk to me about a certain topic. It will take on the persona of someone who understands that topic very well. I asked about JavaScript the other day, and it started throwing acronyms and stuff at me because that's what you do when you're a JavaScript expert. You shorten the conversation by moving into a different set of language, right? And if you transfer me this knowledge from one context where there are a bunch of JavaScript experts to another context, like a management context or a human customer context, um, the knowledge doesn't just CP. You have to understand the perspective that's being used, and you have to figure out what specialized understanding is being implied by this language, right? And that's not at all obvious. It's not something that you just well, maybe it is for an agent, right? Maybe an agent reads a piece of text and it goes, oh yeah, this is from the corner of my brain that has something to do with spaces versus tabs, or whatever. Um, Certainly, it's not something that I can do, right? Like as a person who has higher education in a certain discipline, if I go and read a biology textbook, I'm not going to get it. I need to go back to biology 101, or maybe like 97, and start from nothing and build up to that. And sort of assuming that, oh yeah, you can just write whatever, I can just pull together any knowledge that I need. It's like you're creating a search problem as well. The human department's moat is tacit knowledge in head. Not necessarily. For agents, it's a file. Again, you could believe that. It's true that we can record our specialization. That's absolutely true. Although it can get more sophisticated than that, right? If we weren't just writing down files, but we were starting to organize our knowledge in some way, uh, maybe not just making a vector database where it's like you're thinking of something, you're thinking of a sort of magical concept, but you're actually providing links between ideas, or you're trying to craft something new, trying to think by analogy. You know, the the jargon, specialization, and the analogies that you pick are going to take you somewhere different, depending on whether you're a designer, an engineer, front end engineer, a back end engineer, a usability expert. You'll all look at the same file and you'll all read different things. Uh, we can get forkable experts. That's absolutely true. So this is more about bandwidth, right? Prompt and notes and concurrent invocations. Well, this is funny because they're all reading and writing the same file, right? If they're all accumulating institutional knowledge, that with concurrent writing, it's not as obvious as it looks. The software industry at large has like learned that lesson. All right. So we'll definitely, when we talk to it, we're gonna push back about institutional knowledge, CP, permanent departments. Don't have hierarchy for its own sake. Every layer must earn its existence by reducing total context cost. I do believe that. It's like if we had a department and going to it for a request is more expensive than just spending high cognition tokens, it's not good enough, right? But how do you make these comparisons? Performance management. Agents return useful work or get replaced. Well, there won't be any pips, yeah, but I mean, this is an interesting question. Should we have performance metrics? How do we determine usefulness? Useful in what context? Um, we don't have to have static org charts, but it says the company should reshape on every molecule. Isn't that the pendulum has swung way too far to the other direction, right? So yeah, this is a pretty aggressively contrary to what I'm saying, which is great. I much prefer interacting with the agent when it's being aggressively contrary than when it's you're absolutely right. Things to add that humans don't have. Reverse discovery. I now know X. So I do think that experts need to advertise their capabilities. And there's a really interesting discussion that we could have. We made a design doc in Gastown about this. It has to do with the two sides of every task. One is sort of the problem picture, where the user comes with a certain request in its problem language, but the expert who resolves that task might resolve it in its solution language. And those aren't necessarily the same language at all. You can give lots of examples, but of course, if the if the office worker says, "Hey, my computer's not working," the IT guy says, "Did you turn it off and turn it on again?" And It's sort of a joke, right? Because maybe the computer's not on. Maybe that's not why it's not working. Um, and that will help the office worker to solve their problem, right? And the IT worker is trying to build a bridge from the problem that the customer hasn't quite presented into the solution that they see often, which is, oh, well, this has something to do with power supply, or they're just not being very observant or something like that. But we can come up with more sophisticated examples. This web page won't load, and the expert can think of a lot of reasons why a web page won't load. And so the problem gets advertised as, a fatal or a 404 or whatever the customer sees when the web page isn't loading. It's just spinning forever. There's a beach ball there. And the expert could come and say, hey, can you make me a video? Can you show me what steps you do? Please tell me the URL that you used. They have a lot of other details. And when they root cause that customer's problem, there could be a lot of different things that they would put in their language that won't make much sense to the user. The final outcome from the expert to the user might be something like, um, okay, we did see that something was wrong. Try it again, it should be working. But the internal explanation could be almost anything from, oh yeah, AWS was down, the domain was misconfigured, a certificate was not renewed, uh, that got deleted in a deployment, um, etc. A web server wasn't working. There could have been a lot of reasons why that web page wouldn't load, or there was a storm on the underlying resources, and it was impossible for requests to get through. They were going too slow. Um, we were getting DDoSed. There could be a lot of reasons, and those reasons in the solution language would get recorded in a different way than the problem that surfaced on the customer side. And so I guess what that means to me is that when experts are registering new expertise in the solution language, they need to be mapping it somehow to the problem language. And both of those sides might be needed, depending on the sophistication of the person with the problem coming with the problem. If they know more details, then that helps them match better. Um, but the experts are really building their repertoire around their, problem presentation and solutions, right? Um, and they say that the concierge is caching things, but why aren't different departments caching things? If the concierge, say that we grow our company sufficiently, that there are a lot of different departments, it's just a big enough job for the concierge to go, oh, well, we have this kind of expertise and this kind and this kind and this kind. And I don't know about them really, but, go over this way, right? Start routing. This one has to do with the performance bar for a certain agent. Composable concierges. There we go. This is more like what I'm talking about. Every other agent has a cheap habit of consulting it. Interesting. I guess to me that means that like there needs to be a prompting that's universal across all of our agents. Okay, let's start pushing back now. I'll push back on the institutional memory section. In one sense, in one section, you seem to be saying that, quote, repertoire growth depends on institutional memory and hiding details. But in another section, you say that, quote, again, knowledge transfer is CP, and we don't need permanent departments. Permanent departments. Say that I believed that subconcierge is another name for institutional boundary, which I think it is in this discussion. Is another name for institutional boundary. The details we are hiding are the shape of the department. To me, it feels like reconstituting the company for every molecule, while flexible, swings the pendulum far away from this structure. The pendulum far away from this structure. Especially if our goal is to turn some research across many different departments from reading files to message passing among I wanted to say trained experts, specialized experts. We would like to have some continuity in the shape of our experts. We would like to figure out when an expert needs to grow or needs to grow to answer a new request or needs to hand off to a more appropriate expert. Talk to me about it. Also feels like the concierge, as you described, becomes a bottleneck for all the knowledge management of the entire city. It, it seems like it would quickly become the source of what to know instead of who to know. Um, feel feel free to criticize these ideas. You're absolutely right. Wow. All right. You caught a real contradiction. Only holds within a department. You can fork the same prompt and notes file across the department. It happens by message passing. Yes. Departments are stable boundaries. They own a charter prompt, a notes file, and a meta decision policy for incoming questions. Subconcierge's department, basically. It put I like how it used the approximately equal sign. Expert is an invocation of a department, ephemeral and forkable. A concierge is a topic router across departments, should be deliberately done. What to know drift. This is the failure mode I think you're right to be afraid of. Don't make the concierge smarter, but make it dumber. Its directory entry should be capability statements. Yeah. Handoff must be cheaper than paraphrasing. That's great. Okay, very interesting. And it's interesting that it has an assessment of how many tokens it would cost to do one versus the other. Um, maybe it's just making up numbers, but I'm going to assume that it actually knows something. It only matters if routing cost scales with question complexity. Course topic matching goes to department. The concierge won't reason, it's matching. This is interesting. It's sort of like saying the best TPM, well, in this system, obviously. So I would say like the best TPM has been around, knows everybody, has instant recall of all of the people at the department. But I think what it's trying to say here is that if you do know all that stuff, then it's expensive knowledge. Maybe it's interesting. It's an interesting question. Okay, yeah, I like this. Very interesting. Grow handoff and split. I've had this discussion, a version of this discussion before, especially as I was working on that design about capabilities for Gastown. Make the decision belong to the department, not the concierge. Grow if it's adjacent to the charter. It's really interesting. If it's outside of the charter, then hand off. Spawn a sub-department if you keep getting stuff. Yes, I like that. I think that there are certain things that we could do to sort of detect this happening. If we start accumulating a really big notes file, and then especially if a certain topic in that notes file starts to balloon out of control, we could see that. We could read that. And you're like, oh, wow, this section has gotten really big. Maybe it's time to, spawn a team. And that's fairly good analogy for what would happen inside of a human organization too. Overstability. All right, let's talk about problems. Overstability is real, but subtle. Human departments accumulate scope creep, but agents have the LLM default to attempt and answer. Yes. We have to actively reward this is not ours responses. So this has to do with routing. um, and I guess some places that I've worked, um, it's not just that you want to say, this isn't my problem, somebody else work on it, because you hate work and you want to twiddle your thumbs or read the internet or drink a pina colada or something. It's more like I'm the wrong person to do this. And you know that you're the wrong person to do this when you don't own the systems at issue, you don't know anything about this, you suspect that there's somebody else that could do this a lot better than you. Um, and so the reward of not doing bad work, right, is that you're not wasting your own time and you're not wasting the customer's time. And so routing correctly is really good and important. And how do you reward that inside of this kind of structure? We don't want this to happen. It would be really interesting again to have Conway's law enforcement, right? We don't want to have fictional boundaries. We don't want to have do everything departments because that will violate the law that our communication structures should mirror our software and vice versa. Splitting decision can't live only inside of the department. A department won't reliably propose splitting itself. Teams don't reorg themselves. This is a little bit questionable. Um, Certainly, like the teams that I've been on had to request that new resources be added. Maybe that decision had to go up the chain a little bit, but there are departments that split themselves. Not just because they feel that the additional focus is going to be helpful, the reorganization, the shape of their work, or the communication boundaries of the software that they want to write have changed, right? Those are all reasons why you might change from having one big mono team to having three specialized teams. A city level hygiene pass, an auditor formula that looks for clustering and proposes splits. Again, this is sort of like Conway's law enforcement. When a single question spans departments, you don't want the asking agent to do the orchestration. You want a research coordinator department. Okay, interesting. So, yeah, I think that there are things that are cross cutting in software. Um, I mean, certainly like a migration that many teams have to do because they all have the same infrastructure, for instance. Um, but maybe we want to change a pattern that everybody's been doing a certain way that has spread as the community of practice. Or the other way to think about this is matrix management has to do with the function that you're doing versus the domain that you're doing, right? So, for instance, I as an engineer working on, let's just use rocket factory manufacturing. I'm an engineer and I'm working on rocket factory manufacturing. And my engineering lead might have a certain perspective on something, or my customers or the people that I'm working with inside of the product, inside of rocket manufacturing, might have a different way of doing things or a different emphasis. And their priorities can come into conflict. And it's not always obvious which side should win. For instance, manufacturing needs something to get built for real in a certain time frame. And engineering needs software that won't cause engineers to quit and will be safe for the long term and factored according to the best practices of our community of practice, right? And so, you know, just if you happen to ladder up to one, the concerns of the other can always kind of supervene and cut across all of the uh, different communities of practice under its umbrella, right? Or the other way around. There might be some engineering thing that needs to be done across many different product areas. Okay, so how do we want to answer here? Um, yeah, I like department expert concierge. That's good. Um, Concierge dumbing. Yes. Hmm. Maybe we should be talking about caching in the concierge. If you're presented with a novel question and it doesn't appear in your directory, then you should be reasoning about who it should go to or who's the closest. If there is nobody to answer it, maybe you have to kick it upstairs to the mayor or something like that. And the mayor has to create a whole new department. I'm sure this could happen like they're a software company and you didn't know that you had to pay all of these taxes in different jurisdictions. If you kick that up to the executive, they might go, "Oh crap! Well, we only have a year and we've got to build a tax department," and off you go. Um, all right. So we can imagine some routing questions where the concierge reasons once or for a while. Um, all right. We've got a lot of stuff about Conway's law enforcement. Um, and we've got a lot of stuff about. Okay, great. All right. Great. I think we are much closer to agreement now. Agreement now. I have been thinking about Conway's law enforcement. I've been thinking about Conway's law enforcement, and it does seem like our discussion hit a couple of points there. The charter enforcing the charter of a department is about ensuring that it remains cohesive, loosely coupled. I believe that violations of this would be could be measured as the charter grows, could be detected. And and that could start a correction process. I think there are times when a department could detect that it needs to split. Teams do sometimes reorg themselves when communicate when they realize that their own communication structures no longer mirror the product they are maintaining, or vice versa. And sometimes this kind of reorganization would be hidden behind the sub concierge or the department. But I do buy that it's great to enforce Conway's law by doing clustering notes, or perhaps even communications. Communications and completed tasks of a department, and looking for conformity and looking for splits, merges, other edits that need to be done. Um, there's probably a certain amount that could be done just with graphic analysis. I like the idea of research, especially for queries where the owning department is not obvious, and or the concern may be a cross-cutting aspect of many departments. There's an analogy to running a migration costs. The common infrastructure product. The other thing that we were talking about was when the concierge has to reason. I think sometimes the concierge has to reason. It can be presented with a novel question or request to triage, and it might not have a ready answer in the directory. But then it could reason about the distance of the question from existing departments. if there wasn't a good match, it could escalate. To the mayor, and that might be a signal to create a new department in Carter. And of course, can store the ultimate for future. Let's see. Oh yeah, right. Rewarding handoff has something to do human departments with the knowledge that there is or should be a better resolver for a certain question. With the metric being optimized is something like time to resolve customer. Good routing lowers that time, and good expertise. Lowers that time. And I'll say apt. It's hard to solve the unskilled and unaware of a problem with low cognition agents. We might want to brainstorm ways to keep agents in their lane. It seems like a very big problem, like an industry-wide problem to me. I don't know why it's having trouble with this retry. I'm just gonna save this note somewhere. You never know. Note on routing. Okay. All right. Well, in case our I don't know what it's retrying or why. Maybe I should control C this. Is Claude having a problem? All right. Well, if it is, in any case, I probably got to get off pretty soon. Um, hopefully we can just pick it up from here. Elevated error rates. That is, yeah. There's something about maybe like 10 minutes ago. Started going. All right. Well, I guess we'll leave it at that for today. Um, I feel like we've worked out a lot of what we want to work out, and we should be able to go retrieve this conversation if the worst happens. But yeah, if you found this interesting, and I hope you did, let's continue being meta tomorrow. I'll catch you all later.